We've all heard the urban legend of the well to hell, the Soviet drill that dug too deep and recorded the screams of the damned. But that was a cover story, a myth created by the KGB to hide something much worse. In 1975, a highly classified drilling operation in the frozen Siberian tundra didn't break into hell. At a depth of 12 kilometers, the drill bit broke through the crust and dropped into a massive, perfectly spherical void. When they lowered specialized thermal microphones into the dark, they didn't hear screams. They heard a rhythm. It was the slow, mathematical ticking of a machine the size of a city, buried deep beneath the Earth's surface. And the terrifying part wasn't that the machine was down there. It was that when it realized we were listening, it changed its tempo. The year was 1975. While the Americans were looking up at the moon, the Soviet Union was looking down. The goal was to drill completely through the Earth's crust into the mantle. The project was designated Protocol Red Earth. The facility was built in one of the most isolated regions of Siberia. It was a massive, brutalist fortress of gray concrete, rusted iron, and tangled power lines surrounded by hundreds of miles of frozen, dead tundra. During the long winter months, temperatures dropped to -50 degrees. The 120 engineers, geologists, and military personnel assigned to the project were completely cut off from the outside world. The heart of the facility was the drill tower, a monstrous structure that deafened the crew with a constant bone-rattling roar. For 3 years, they ground through solid granite. The pressure and heat at that depth were unimaginable. They were replacing melted tungsten drill bits daily. Chief Engineer Anatoly Volkov noted in his official logs that the rock composition was changing. It was becoming unnaturally dense. By November 12th, they reached a depth of 12,262 meters. Then, the impossible happened. The massive drill string, weighing hundreds of tons, suddenly dropped. It didn't hit harder rock. It fell into empty space. The pressure gauges flatlined. The drill was spinning freely in a void. Volkov ordered the drill to be pulled up. When the bit finally reached the surface, the hardened tungsten wasn't just melted. It was sheared off perfectly smooth, as if cut by an immense, precise laser. To find out what was down there, they attached a heavy, lead-shielded thermal microphone to the cable and lowered it back into the 12-kilometer abyss. The acoustics room of the Red Earth facility was a cramped concrete bunker, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes and filled with reel-to-reel tape recorders. When the microphone passed the 12-kilometer mark, Volkov and his team put on their heavy headphones, expecting to hear the chaotic, rushing sound of subterranean magma or tectonic shifts. Instead, the tape captured a sound that made the blood freeze in their veins. It was a deep, metallic, resonant thud, followed by exactly 3 seconds of silence. Then another thud. It was a perfect, unchanging mathematical rhythm. The acoustic signature wasn't geological, it was mechanical. Something unimaginably massive was operating down there. For a week, the tape recorders ran 24 hours a day. The rhythm never sped up. It never slowed down. It was a metronome of the apocalypse. But the true horror didn't start in the borehole. It started in the minds of the crew. The human brain is an advanced pattern recognition machine. When subjected to a perfect, unbroken rhythm for too long, the brain tries to sync with it. Because the facility's intercom system was hardwired into the acoustics lab, The low-frequency thud faintly echoed through the concrete walls of the entire base. Sleep became impossible. The crew started to exhibit symptoms of severe collective psychosis. Men stopped speaking in normal sentences. Their words became clipped, timed perfectly to the 3-second intervals of the machine. Volkov noted in his diary that the facility felt different. He wrote, "The concrete corridors seem longer. The angles of the walls are wrong. I dropped a bolt yesterday, and it didn't fall straight down. It curved toward the borehole." The machine wasn't just ticking. It was generating a localized gravitational and electromagnetic field, and it was slowly pulling the facility and everyone inside it into its rhythm. The isolation of the Siberian winter meant no one could escape. By December, the Red Earth facility was a madhouse ruled by mathematics. The guards stopped patrolling. Instead, they stood perfectly still in the freezing courtyard, blinking in unison every 3 seconds. The cooks stopped preparing food. The engineers stopped maintaining the generators. The only thing that mattered was the rhythm. Volkov, desperately trying to hold on to his sanity, barricaded himself in his office. He realized the terrifying truth. The machine hadn't been activated by their drill. It had always been awake. But the open borehole was acting like an acoustic chimney, allowing its frequency to rewrite the surface. The architecture of the brutalist base was physically changing. Heavy steel doors no longer fit into their frames. The concrete floors were subtly sloping downward, spiraling toward the central drill shaft. The facility was becoming an extension of the machine. On December 21st, the microphone feed recorded a change. The rhythm didn't speed up. It altered its composition. The heavy thud was now accompanied by a wet, scraping sound. Through the crackling intercom, Volkov heard the remaining crew members marching toward the main drill hall. They were moving with a perfect mechanical synchronization. He watched through the reinforced glass of the control booth as dozens of men and women surrounded the open abyss of the borehole. They didn't look like humans anymore. Their bodies were locked in rigid, unnatural postures. Their eyes were completely bloodshot, staring blindly down into the dark. Then, exactly on the beat of the deep subterranean thud, the first man stepped forward and threw himself into the 12-kilometer hole. 3 seconds later, thud. The next person stepped off the edge. The machine wasn't just ticking, it was feeding. It required biological mass to synchronize with its gears. Volkov knew that if the frequency spread beyond the facility, the entire world would eventually march to the rhythm of the machine. He broke into the explosive stores used for clearing rock jams. He wired hundreds of kilograms of industrial explosives directly to the main concrete supports of the drill tower, right over the borehole. His final audio log is heavily distorted by the electromagnetic field. "It is not a machine," he whispered. "It is an engine, and the Earth is just its shell." He detonated the charges. The massive tower collapsed, dropping thousands of tons of steel and concrete directly into the shaft, sealing the hole and burying Volkov under the rubble. Weeks later, a military recovery team arrived. They found a ruined base and no survivors. The official KGB report blamed a catastrophic gas explosion. The entire facility was buried under a thick dome of solid concrete, and the area was scrubbed from all maps. Today, the site looks like nothing more than a rusted metal cap in the middle of a frozen wasteland. But modern seismologists studying deep crustal movements in Siberia occasionally pick up a strange anomaly on their most sensitive equipment. A faint, deep, rhythmic vibration coming from 12 kilometers down. It's muffled by the concrete, but it's still there, still ticking, still waiting for someone to dig deep enough to hear the music clearly again. Now, I have a question for you. If you found a ticking machine the size of a city inside the Earth, would you want humanity to study it or bury it forever? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this journey into the dark geometry of the Earth kept you awake, hit the like button. It disrupts the frequency. And subscribe to Static Archive for more unclassified nightmares. Stay safe, and don't listen too closely to the silence.